Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Overlanding Newbie channel. So what I'm doing today, and I wanted just to kind of let you come along for the ride, is expanding on the water system on the Dingo trailer. So I've got a 25-gallon freshwater tank on the trailer, and what I wanted to do was incorporate in a water heater, shower system, kitchen sink, and a water filtration system. So in a previous video, you've already seen me mount the 23-0 shower tent and kind of Gibsonized a racking system and a slide out system for that. So if you're curious about that, was really happy with that product, check that out in an earlier video. But today what I wanted to do was show you the water pump, water heater system that I'm going with, unbox that, give you some of my thoughts on it, and then show you how I'm mounting it. And then lastly, I did have to do a little bit of Gibsonizing around water line connections and propane connections. So learned through a couple failures along the way how that all needs to work. So I'll share some of that with you as well. So first, let's take a look at the water pump, water heater system that I went with. Let's unbox that. I'll kind of give you my thoughts on it, and then we'll kind of go into some of the things I learned about the propane fittings, water fittings. Then we'll jump out and see how it all mounts up on the trailer. So thanks again for coming along for the ride. All right, so let's take a look at the Jolca hot tap system. This is the product I've gone with for the water pump, water heater system on the trailer. So another great Australian company, actually very similar to 23-0. I went with them because really kind of the similar thing I've had with some of the other products that I've selected. Simple, easy product. Tough, designed for van life, overlanding, and good customer service. In fact, the box that it came in was slightly cracked when it showed up. I sent them an email, and a few days later they had it replaced. So great company, good customer service so far. But let's unbox it and take a look at what we've got inside. So I did go with what they call their Nomad kit, and it literally comes with everything, including the kitchen sink, which is the box it comes in. I'll show you how that works. But it does have the water heater, which has a temperature control on it and a flow control. So obviously, you slow down the flow, you can increase the temperature on it, and you can kind of use it to adjust that way. It comes with a shower head, a kitchen sink faucet, the kitchen sink, and then a long extendable source hose. So ultimately, you can use multiple sources of water to work with this system. In my case, I've got the 25-gallon freshwater tank on the Dingo trailer, but you can pump water straight from a bucket. You can pump water from a jerry can. You can pump water from a river or creek or stream, lake that you might be nearby. In fact, it even comes with a debris filter to make sure you're not pumping in anything that would be damaging to the pump and the heater system. So so far it looks really good, but let's unbox it, take a look at what it comes with, and then we'll kind of give you my thoughts on it as well. So the way the kitchen sink is designed, it actually even has really strong side panels that you can use for drying dishes and things like that as you're doing it. All the hoses are quick disconnect, so they actually function on a simple quick disconnect, just like you would use for a garden hose system. So when I do a little bit of Gibsonizing in some of my other connections with my water filtration line, you'll see how I've been able to purchase a hose fitting quick disconnect, and it fit right on into this. So they color code their hoses. Red is for the post pump or after the pump, or after the heater, and then blue is everything leading up to the heater. It does come with a quick setup guide, which is I've taken a quick look at, pretty handy there. This is the heater. So pretty basic. Again, I was looking for basic. I was looking for tough. I didn't want anything too complex. I didn't want anything that was going to be breaking on me out in the field. So the pump system does come with the water in quick disconnect, the water out quick disconnect, and then a propane quick disconnect on it. And the way that it's set up is you can actually run this right off of a propane, a 5-pound propane tank, a 20-pound propane tank. You can even run these off of the 1-gallon propane tank. I'll actually show you when I show you a little bit more about some of the propane fittings, the adapter that you would need to do that. But super simple, really basic. It feels pretty tough. Everything seems to be put together well. The fittings do have a little bit of water in them. I actually was reading up, they do test this at their factory before they send it out. So make sure everything's functioning properly. This is the cigarette lighter 12-volt adapter for the water pump. So the hot tap basically functions as soon as water starts pumping into the water heater. It clicks on, it's got 2 D batteries within it. It clicks on and starts the propane flow and heating up of the water to your set temperature. The pump runs off of a 12-volt, again, with the cigarette lighter adapter source. So I'll show you how I've got that connected out in my battery box to make the connection here. But pretty simple, really long hose, or really long cord, which I like there as well. So propane line. One of the things I learned about propane lines is that all of them are going to have some sort of a diffuser or something used to reduce the pressure within the system. And then it actually does come with the system, the quick disconnect to make the connection to the water heater. I will tell you, this line is a little shorter than I was hoping it was going to be. One of the Gibsonizing projects you'll see me do is all around building an extension for that. So I'll show you how I did that. 2 blue lines, so obviously the ability of going kind of short or even longer on your source water line. So this is into the pump and then out of the pump into the water heater. And then 2 long lines for your out of the water heater into the kitchen sink or shower head. The other thing I'll show you here is that it on the shorter lines, they do come with either a 3-way splitter or just a straight coupling splitter. So those go into the quick disconnects, and then the next hose can connect right into it. So you can split this to go one direction to the shower head and the other direction to the kitchen sink. Is basically how it's set up there. Here is the pump. So it is a pretty simple pump. Switch on off at the bottom. It's got its power source in at the bottom, and then it's got water in and water out, and it's got a nice little arrow on the back here to show you which way the water flow should be going. The pump functions like a pretty traditional RV pump, meaning that when it reaches a certain pressurization within the lines, the pump turns off. When the pressure opens up or becomes low, meaning water is flowing through it, the pump starts picking back up and starts pushing it until that pressurized level is met again. So when you switch on the kitchen sink or switch on the shower head, the pressure reduces, the pump comes on, everything starts flowing, turns on the heater at the heater pump, and everything just keeps going there. So it does come with the D batteries for the water heater. This is the shower head, again with that switch that basically just allows flow to come through. No electrical connection from this to the pump. It is just an open or close. When it's open, pressure reduces, pump turns on. But I will say I'm pretty happy with the feel of these. They've got kind of a nice rubber grip on them. Pretty strong. I think those look to be built pretty well. And same thing here on the kitchen sink. Lots of adjustability, on-off switch, nice kind of rubber grip handle on it. And then it does have, for both the shower faucet and the kitchen sink, it does kind of have a handle connection, so you can rest this. And then the way this works is this slot guy right here slips into the kitchen sink, clamps on, and now your kitchen sink is set up and held there. So those look pretty nice as well. It does come with an extra quick disconnect. So I haven't quite learned ultimately the usage for this guy yet, but there's a good chance that as I am adding in my own water filtration line and kind of doing multiple splits on it, that could come in handy. So I am glad they included that. And then lastly, it looks like this is the debris filter that would go on the end of the hose. The size of this is nice. Again, can fit right down into a jerry can or a bucket. And then it looks like the way this works fits through here. And then when this sits on the bottom of a creek or a stream or lake that you might be pulling water out of, it keeps this from resting right on the bottom and picking up sediment or debris and bringing it into the system. So that's really nice, built really well. This is a ground base that can be used for the Jolca. So you can actually set this in it. It's got the space underneath it for your hoses and everything to kind of come in and make their connections. As I mentioned before, I'm going with the rack system that I bought as an add-on and going to actually mount that inside one of the trailer doors. I'll show you that when we go outside and get that thing mounted on. That looks to be the last of it. So this is the bottom case and the kitchen sink at the same time. Oh, and the kitchen sink does have a drain on it. And I'll show you a little bit later. I've got a, basically I'm gonna put a hose on to kind of screw right into that drain because it is a female thread. And I'll just have a hose drain right out into a bucket so I can collect that water at the campsite and dispose of it safely. So that's the unboxing. What I'll do next is I'll show you a little bit about what I'm going to be doing from a Gibsonizing standpoint. You know, every one of these projects has some Gibsonizing in it around the propane system and adding a water filtration line as part of the water system and some quick disconnects and fittings that I'm using on the water system to connect to my water tank. So again, thanks for coming along for the ride. Let's check out some of the Gibsonizing. All right, so let's talk propane fittings here. So as I mentioned, the hose that comes along with the Jolca kit, a little bit small. When you go out and I show you how I'm gonna have it all mounted and racked, you'll see it's just, this is too short. My propane tank and my water heater are gonna be too far apart. So I needed an extension. So first mistake I made is I bought a extension hose. Awesome, great. Except it had the traditional fitting on this side and a traditional fitting on this side. These are just your standard propane tank fittings. Well, I shouldn't say it's just standard. There's what's called the pole fitting, and then there's, I think it's called a type 2 fitting, if I recall correctly, which is this exterior fitting would be the type 2, and then the pole fitting is the one that actually screws onto the inside with more of a male piece on the other side. So didn't work exactly for the extension for the Jolca. All good. I needed an extension to be able to connect my fire pit a little further away from the trailer. So all good. Next, I bought a extension hose that did not have the propane connections at the end. All good, except then when I started to get fittings, I started to do some research on fittings. Didn't know a whole lot about pipe fittings and propane fittings and things of that nature. To totally simplify it, and you can get much more complicated than this, there are what's called NPT or pipe thread, and there are flare fittings. So a pipe thread looks like this, standard, you know, what you would think of from a standard thread standpoint, and a flare fitting has the flare here on the end. So what I quickly found was that a NPT, so this is just a coupling for that has pipe thread on it, will not get over, even if it's the same size, will not get over that flare portion of the fitting. So flare needs to go with flare and NPT needs to go with NPT. So in my case, I bought fittings to go with this extension and this extension. If you look on the inside of it, I think you can see it there, has a flare piece there, and obviously it's a flare male end on this side. So had to get new fittings that are flare connections. So that's one of the big things I learned from a standpoint of propane fittings is obviously make sure you're working with understand that if you're working with flare types of connections or NPT types of connections, and everything will work and function really well for you if you do that. The other thing I was going to show you while we're talking about propane is this is one of those good old fashioned Coleman 1 pound propane cans. Your Jolca can actually run off of one of these or a propane tank. If it runs off of one of these, you need an adapter. I'll have a link to one of these down in the description, but obviously this is what connects onto your 1 pound tank, and then your Jolca connection on the other end, the traditional type 2 propane tank fitting will connect right onto that. Make sure that you have this connected to the hose first, because if you put this on the can, you get a little bit, you're going to get all the discharge coming out very quickly. So make sure that you connect this to your hose first and then to your can. And then lastly, the Jolca does use a pretty traditional propane quick disconnect. That functions really well. It does come with all the fittings for that, but you can also buy these on Amazon or anywhere else. So that's propane. Let me show you what I'm doing with the water tank and some of the water fittings, and then we'll start hooking it all up. All right, so here's kind of what I've got lined up for the Gibsonizing of some water connections. So one thing I do want to point out, I mentioned that there was an extra quick disconnect in the Jolca kit. I realized this is for connecting to a water hose. So if you are ever camping in a place with hookups or just at the house or anywhere else, this is basically a quick disconnect to connect into a water hose line. This is the disconnect that I bought on Amazon. I'll post a link to it, but basically just a brass fitting quick disconnect. I like it because it actually has a lock on it. But same system that the Jolca uses. So if you are looking at trying to modify and do some of your own customizations, these quick disconnects will work right alongside it. I also like this one because it did come with extra gaskets. If you notice, the disconnects on the Jolca do have these gaskets within them to help make a good solid seal. The rest of what you see here is connecting to the water tank on the Dingo trailer. So it does have a flare fitting. So I'll be using these to make that connection. That will come down into the pump. And then from out of the pump, I'm immediately going into a Y, one that will go over to the heater, and the other is going to come over to this ball valve, which will then connect to a LifeStraw. This is their LifeStraw Flex kit. It has a a bag that you can kind of set up for a gravity feed of the water through the filter. I'm just going to put it in line on a hose. It's going to come out here. The cool thing is that it has a traditional hose fitting for on one end, so it'll connect right on into my ball valve. I'll be able to open up my ball valve and pump water through the fitting. The other thing about this particular LifeStraw is that it does filter all the bacteria that you might run into while out off the grid, but it also filters lead or reduces lead and heavy metals as well. So just with metal fittings and things like that, I always like to be super cautious of those. Try to think of anything else to highlight here. I think that's it. So what I'm going to do is start hooking it up on the Dingo, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get done with that. All right. Well, let's see how the Jolca kind of gets put together. So I've got everything assembled. I've gone in and fixed a couple little water leaks. I'll talk to you about when I show you some of the connections. But I just wanted to show you how I've kind of got it hooked up and set up. And then I also wanted to, I haven't even turned the heat on yet, and I wanted to do a heat test to see what the heating capabilities of the Joolca is for the water. It's a chilly day here in Northern California. It's Christmas Eve, so I wanted to kind of just get an idea of what that is going to look like when we have starting water in a cool temperature. So I'll circle back here. This is kind of the sink. I did bust out the Jolca user guide and all of the quick setup manuals, which were super simple, but you know, most of the Jolca really is. I do have my 23.0 tent opened up here. We'll give the shower a turn on here in a second, but what I wanted to do first was show you the mount. So I did mount the Jolca unit on the inside of the door here on the side of my trailer using that Jolca mount. So worked out really well, bolted on very nicely. It did bolt through the door, but I put some nice shiny chrome caps on the other side, so not a big deal there. And there was room on the back side of this for the heads of the bolts. You do want to try and keep those as low profile as possible, but because it does not actually come with any, so you'll want to make sure you keep those pretty low profile, but there was room for that. So I've got my blue water in here, and I'll show you that in a second. I've got my propane to my quick disconnect, which I did end up adding and building an extension hose to get that to go a little bit further, and then this is our red water out line. All these quick disconnects from Jolca really work really nice. I will tell you that these connections right here onto the quick disconnect, on a few of them were a little bit loose, so if you see some water leaking out of them, just give these a little tighten together, and that should solve your problem there. So let me show you how I've got everything kind of mounted up here. So I did want to point out, I do have the smaller propane tank, and I do have an exterior mount on my trailer. I'm a huge fan of these exterior mounts. I'll put a link to this company that builds this one. Super strong, really like it, and it even comes with a lock on it. So I did end up, from my water tank in my trailer, building out a fitting that led down into a quick disconnect. That was again using the hose quick disconnects, which I'll have a link onto in the description below. So out of the water tank into the pump, you'll want to make sure that you're taking notice that the pump does have an arrow on it that shows you the water in direction and then the water out direction. And then what I did is I've actually put a Y here. So again, using some of these quick disconnect fittings that I bought, one end goes out to my water filter, which I'll show you here in a second, and the other continues out that blue line and then down into the bottom of the Jolca unit and making the connection right up into the unit. So and then out of the Jolca unit, you've got the red hot hose which I brought into a Y here. And again, all these Ys come with the Jolca set. So we split it, and one comes out to the shower head within the shower, and then the other had plenty of extension hose to run to the sink unit. And so that just comes into the sink faucet. Again, all these just connect via the quick disconnect, and both the shower and the sink just function off of this on-off pressure there. And you hear the pump come on and off as water's flowing. When there is low pressure, pump turns on because water's flowing. When the pressure builds up, meaning that the system is closed, pump shuts off. So really simple system. Been messing around with it a little bit as I've been doing this setup, and it's functioning really well. So really happy with the hoses and the connections and the faucets and the switches and everything so far. So next, let's take a look at how it's going to heat. Again, I haven't even done this yet. Next, let's take a look at the water filter I put on. So again, you can kind of see up here off the Y that is out of the pump, because I wanted this to be before it went into the Jolca and had water heating elements going to it. Again, Jolca's mentioned that they are not food grade, so I'm trying to limit the amount of non-food grade contact this has before going into the filter. So put the Y on there, so one goes out to the Jolca. That's that blue line you see kind of going off the top of the screen, and then this clear line is my water filter. So this is going out into an Inline LifeStraw filter. Now this one I chose because it does filter lead as well as bacterial and chlorine and things of that nature. This is a gravity fed unit, so you do not want to put too much pressure into the filter, otherwise the water will blow past the filtration elements within the filter. So I put a ball valve on here, a stainless steel ball valve, so that I can, one, turn it on and off, and two, control the amount of pressure that is going through here. Depending on how that works, I may even put a inline pressure reducer on this. You can get them at RV stores and things of that nature. So, but this actually, all the fittings and kind of connections here all seem to work out really well using hose fittings, and it seems to be working pretty good. So I was really happy with how that turned out. All right, so there along the wall you can see that's my water tank. So I've got a 25-gallon water tank on here. What I wanted to do was take a temperature reading of the water in the tank now, and then get an idea of the ability for the Jolca to heat that up. So what I've got here is my Pyrex cup. Hold on one second, I'm gonna fill it up. So now what I've got is my Thermapen barbecue cooking probe. But it shows that we've got about a 51, 52 degree ambient temperature. I'm imagining that the water temperature inside the water tank is pretty much the same. So we'll just call that call it 52 degrees to give it an extra degree. Next, what I was going to do is turn on the shower. We'll let it start running, and we'll see how quickly we get up to temperature. What I am going to do, again, kind of using the base recommendations from Jolca, is I am going to turn it on full heat, and then I am having it set basically to medium water pressure. So let's go ahead and crank the shower on, and we'll give it a second here, and we'll see how long it starts before it starts warming up. Okay, so first thing I noticed is that once everything started running, per the Jolca instructions, it was supposed to automatically kick on. I hit my Jolca button here. It gave me the little wavy message which told me that there was no water flow. So what I ended up having to do is kick the water flow down really low, and then I heard the pilot light of the Jolca kick on. I saw my temperature gauge started running, and very quickly it jumped up to 108. You can probably see some of the steam coming off of the shower head. I want to just give myself a little extra water pressure here. Up. And looks like when I kick the water pressure on too high, it turned itself off. So I know it does have a self shut off to make sure that it doesn't get too hot, and it may also just say, hey, listen, you're pumping the water too fast, I can't heat it up, and it kicks off. So let's give that another second to crank up, and then I'm actually just going to do a temperature compare and see how Jolca's thermometer is against a real life thermometer. Oh, the other thing I'll tell you I did is I did have a friend of mine give me a plastic crate, plastic Pepsi crate basically, that I am using kind of as the shower base so that feet don't have to get muddy as you shower. So that's reading 112. Why don't we come over here and see if we can get a reading on that. Now I'll tell you, it looks like I'm definitely fighting the water pressure when running both the sink and the shower. You can see the shower head pressure is dropping here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. My water pressure has come back on at the sink. Plenty of steam. Heat is cranking. Let's double check the Jolca thermometer. It's at 112. Looks like I've got that 112, 113, and 114 mark looking good. So the Jolca thermometer's on. If you're seeing a little bit of bubbles in that water, I did a clean out of my water tank, so there's still a little bit of clean out going on there. This is obviously the sink of the Jolca. It comes with these really cool dish drying plates, and it's sturdy. Like, it will literally hold your pots and pans. It has a side drain on it, which I've got just a little brass fitting put in, and then I can drain it right down into a bucket at my campsite so that I'm collecting all of my wastewater and disposing of it properly. But yeah, I think I am really happy with the Jolca. Now it's giving me an error message here. That error message is the safety switch to say, hey, listen, you're cranking it too hot. So I'm going to kind of crank it up. I want to crank the heat down and crank my water pressure down again. You heard the snap, 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 snap of the pilot light coming back on. and you can see the heat starting to rise again. So it will shut itself off when getting too hot. It will shut off at, I think it's 113 or 114. I don't have it right in front of me. So really happy with how the Jolca systems come out. Everything seems to be working really well. Very happy. Thank you, Jolca, and thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for coming along for the ride.